I'll call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Tyler, want to lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a minute, please. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, Tyler, but that's one of our new officers that I was going to introduce tonight, so please bow your heads. Tonight's prayer is dedicated to Chris Dean. Passed away a couple weeks ago, lived over on McIntosh with his wife, Velvet, and she used to sing, or she still does, she sings the national anthem for us at all of our events. So, and Chris was always the first one to come up and hand me some money for the fireworks for the next year. So tonight's prayer is in dedication to Chris Dean. Heavenly Father, we ask for your continued blessings on us tonight. We ask that you watch over and protect our two new officers, Josh and Tyler, and keep them out of harm's way as they protect and serve our families, friends, and all residents of Pataskala. We ask, Father, that you keep safe from the threat of the flu virus, our very young and our very old, and everyone in between. Keep our city employees safe and sound while working on the snow and ice-covered roads as they work all hours of the day and night. And I know I'm asking for a lot tonight, Lord. And again, we ask for all of this in your holy name. Amen. Kathy, roll call, please.
Carter. Walker.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Hayes. Here. Picken.
Here.
Lee.
Okay, we have a quorum present. First thing on the agenda tonight is citizens' comments. And before we get started, I just did want to reiterate, we have a couple of new officers on the force. Josh is out on probably on a call right now. Josh was going to stop in and say hi. Josh DeJesus is one of our newest officers, and so is Tyler. Tyler Walker. Want to stand up and introduce your wife to us?
This is my wife, Skylar.
Hello.
Hi.
Let's see, we swore you in about a week ago
Yes, sir.
or so, and happy to have you on the force, and welcome to the city of Pataskala.
Happy to be here.
And you can go now, you don't have to stay, because it gets long and boring, and we want you fresh as a daisy tomorrow, okay? All right. Anybody wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir. State your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to speak, sir.
Well, that was 10. Jim Helfert, P.O. Box 921, Pataskala. First of all, I'm getting a lot older. Our police officer a lot younger. He looks like a 16-year-old kid. I'd question him in a uniform. Yeah. Hey, most of you probably got my letter, yes? About the water? Okay. It seems pretty cut and dry, but it isn't. Now, I will say there was a conversation with me, and I think his name's Nathan, and I got tired listening to him say, come in and we'll talk about it, and there was some heated words, and I didn't want to talk about it anymore with him because frankly it's taking too long. And for me to compliment the city employees that keep tangling us up was just a ploy just for me to get off on a good start with them. So we're not going to do that anymore. We got to cut the chase. I own a number of rental properties around here, and years ago, like my letter said, the city said, look, we're going to keep this in the person's name. So we're tired of running around doing different bills with everybody. It was the city's idea. It's simple, isn't it? But it's not. Here's what happens. The city will cut a deal with the tenant. They'll let the tenant talk to them about making half payments and or turn-off dates, but I'm the one responsible for it. Now, Nathan takes the position that, Jim, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll make you collect off the tenants. In fact, that's what you're doing. Because I have a service address. Whether I have 10 of them or 20 of them or 50 of them, it's a service address. I pay for that service to have the bill sent there in my name. And what happens is the tenant's supposed to pay that bill by my requirements. But you don't need to know anything about that. All you need to know is the bill wasn't paid or it was paid. Now, if you need to negotiate with somebody about when it's paid or how much we're going to pay, then I'm the person responsible for it. I'm the one on the bill. So So you're not collecting off the tenant. Put this in perspective. When my brother was out of work, I made his house payment for him with a check from my checkbook. But the mortgage company then did not let me negotiate selling his house. I put his account number on my personal check and sent it to the bank, and they took it. You do that with water. My wife and I have different utilities with cell phones and things. But my wife doesn't have to pay it. It's really simple. The bill goes to the house. The bill isn't paid, it's turned off. So while I keep talking here, let it know that at this point, if I get a letter that says the water will be turned off on June 15th or May 15th, I'm assuming that the city has told me that our partnership is done on the 15th. So anything after that, I'm not paying. Next thing is, if you guys don't want to negotiate with anybody, I don't care, give them free water. That's fine, but you're not negotiating with me. Anybody not understand this theory? Now they'll sit there and they'll say, yeah, Jim, we understand. But they're not understanding. To hit that home is when my 5 minutes is up, we're gonna do this over and over again unless you tell me, Jim, we're tired of hearing this, because I'm gonna tell you I'm tired of hearing it too. Now, for negotiations, just so the city doesn't get pissy with me and say, well, tell you what, we'll teach him a lesson. If a tenant would call up, or anyone, and say, hey, I see water coming out of this house. Obviously, the city, whether it would be me calling or anybody calling, you could call Mike or the law director or Mr. Walters, call and say, hey, I see water coming out of this house. And you would go over and work on it. You wouldn't say, Mr. Helby, we're going to deal with him only. No. If a tenant would call up and say, or anybody calls up and say, hi, I live at 180 Vine Street. Well, wait a minute. That's in Mr. Helby's name. Yes, what we'd like to know. Well, what's the fluoride percent in our water? Well, we can't tell you that. That's in Mr. Helby's name. No, let's not be dumb about this thing. But if the tenant calls up and says, look, Mr. Helfridge is a caller. Wears old clothes. His wife shops at Salvation Army. He's well to do. Changes his own oil and truck. He's a pack rat. But you know what? Me and my kids can't live that way. We want to have new dirt bikes and four-wheelers. And we went camping this weekend. We want to have a good time. Not live like him. But you know what? We got a little bit behind in rent. Got a little bit behind in water. We want to work a deal with you. The answer to that is, who are you? Well, I'm Mrs. Jones. Well, that bill's in Mr. Helfrich's name. Mr. Helfrich will have to negotiate with us. Now, I will say that Stephanie has called a number of times and said, Jim, we're turning off the water. It's 2 weeks after our notice was posted.
1 minute, sir.
And do you want it turned off or not? And I may say to her, based on the person, because they're there 10 years, and they've always paid on time, I may say and make a determination that, look, I'm going to tell Stephanie, I'll take care of the bill. Do not turn it off. The money will be in your hand by Friday. But that's a call I make.
30
It's
seconds.
not a call for any of you to make. Okay? If I want to extend it and pay for a tenant, that's for me to do. Not for you to decide to do, or Nathan say, well, Mr. Helfrich is unreasonable. I am tired of these bills being screwed up because the city continues to negotiate with a tenant, deal with somebody that's not on the bill. Whether a tenant or my brother, I'm the one they deal with. They know my voice for sure. But for them to even know it's not me and still do it is wrong. And I'm tired of it, as you could tell by the letter. And I'm sorry I said the employees were all doing a good job. And Nathan, when I first talked to you on the phone, I guess I should have said they've been screwing up Nathan. I'm tired of this bullshit. That's what I should have said instead of trying to get over the terms.
Hi, Mr. Helfrich, you're done. Thank you.
You want to hear it all again?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to hear it all again?
No, your 5 minutes is up, sir.
Okay, well, see, that's the point I'm trying to make, is I'm tired of talking to the city about this every time we have a dispute. That's the point I'm trying to make, too. You're tired of it already within 5 minutes. I'm tired of it after 4 years. I've hit my point home, at least. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Okay. Seeing none, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports, of course I wanted to, hopefully Josh will stop in and you'll get to meet him. If he's on a call, we'd ask him to stop in and introduce himself to council. Maybe he'll stop by a little bit later. Mr. Hicken, what do you got tonight?
I got a couple things, Mayor. First, a quick reminder to council that your ethics filings are due. I don't think the deadline is March, but Kathy is fairly dutiful about sending that out. It's just a reminder to those of us that hold elected office that Is it May, not March? Okay, fair enough. But sooner better. The only reason I do that is I made that mistake once and had to pay a penalty, so. I wanted to give a quick update on the fire board. I did forward my fire board packet from January to council. A couple of things, the department has purchased new heads-up heat displays that fit in the actual helmets of the firemen. If you've ever seen a heat display, it really cuts through the smoke within a building. It's amazing stuff, and it just almost looks like we've entered a Star Wars phase where there's a little heads-up display in the corner of these guys' masks that allow them to locate anything from pets to children to hotspots in a room. It was purchased with a grant, so it didn't come at a significant cost to the fire department. Also, the department decided to take part in a stroke intervention program, and as a result, the stroke intervention process for individuals within the fire district that are being transported has been decreased by 23 minutes. And basically, this involves taking blood on the way to the hospital and notifying the hospital that they believe they might have a stroke patient. The hospital then clears out the MRI machine, gets the lab ready, and 23 minutes when you're talking about stroke time is huge. And so I just think that's awesome. So the ribbon cutting or dirt turning for the new Station 5, which is located up by Jersey, will be on February 9th at 4 o'clock at the site, which is on Morse Road, just east of Mink. And the last thing was, tonight I intend to make a motion for the city to accept a donation of the Eagle Scouts Mountain Howitzer project. Our legal counsel said that to house that, the plan is for the Boy Scouts to move it in and out from inside during winter, bring it back out in spring. That is a firing howitzer, in case anybody forgot, and keeping it out of the cold is a good idea, but the city needs to accept that donation for us to be able to place it under roof. So I'll be making that motion tonight, and that's all I have.
Anything for Tim? That's better known as a cannon, right?
The cannon.
Okay.
I just call it the mountain howitzer because I think it's what it is.
And every firefighter is now equipped with that?
Well, there's 16 more on the way, so we have 16 more on the way. They'll still use the handheld devices. If anybody is familiar with what they used to use, was almost looks like what a police radar gun looks like, for lack of a better term. They will still use those. We'll still use them, not to be too graphic, but late at night, if there's an accident with an ejection, sometimes they'll use those to actually find the people that have been ejected from the vehicles. And like I said, that's a sad instance, but we will still use those. And 32 that will be in place too. So.
Very good. Yes.
Can I add that we've also actually used that technology to find, there was an elderly man who had walked away, and he was in a drain tile up off of Morse Road, and we actually used that. It was another fire department's tool, and we used it and found him. So
Wow, that's awesome.
great.
So good stuff. As I'm sure Mr. Lee could also say.
Very good. Well, we got a couple. Hey, Josh, you want to come up here real quick? I know you guys are out on the road, and we introduced Tyler a little earlier, and I'd like to introduce you to council and everybody. This is Josh DeJesus. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Okay. It's our newest officer. Him and Tyler just joined the ranks, and how you like it so far?
Love it.
All right, very good. Well, welcome to the council. And you guys don't have to stick around. You can if you want to until you get a call, whatever you want to do.
You gotta go deal with
I hear you're gonna pitch in the morning with snow plowing, so we really appreciate that. Just kidding. He didn't even catch that. Good night, guys. Be safe. All right, filling in for Mr. Zetz tonight is Mr. Mosier, David Mosier.
Yes, good evening, everybody, and my report is that Brian does not have a report to provide tonight.
Very good. Should have been the
That was easy.
I'm just kidding. Thank you, sir. And if anything pops up tonight, we'll lean over and grab your expertise. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. Just
few quick things. Later on in the agenda, there is a resolution to consider to confirm my recommendation of Lanier Crawford to serve as the next Pataskala Parks Manager. The confirmation comes about through the new charter language that took effect January 3rd, 2017, that says that the Parks Manager must be confirmed. As we've had the discussion before, Dave Ramsey is working towards retirement, will be going on his way. And we advertised for the position and we reviewed applications, independent, Dave and I both did, identified the top two, the same top two actually, interviewed them and identified Lanier as the top candidate. I look forward to working with Lanier, assuming that council confirms the appointment. He brings a lot of enthusiasm and he is here this evening and certainly is willing to answer any questions that council may have when that resolution comes up. A couple other things I want to mention is just, as we go through our day-to-day routines and our departments are doing stuff and, I don't want to lose sight of some of the things they're doing. We've done a tremendous job with snow removal this year, so, kudos Public Services Department. I don't know how many times I've heard, read, whatever, that when people leave the boundaries of Pataskala, it's just so much worse. And I know we talk about this throughout the winter, but it really hits home. I've joked with Alan and the guys that I remember when I started, and this is not to be critical, but it probably come across, I used to hate when it would snow, because phones would ring. Now it's second nature, so. And not to, I'm not gonna hit every department, but another one, the Utilities Department, Nate's gonna hit on this later. It's in his report. They recently had their annual EPA inspection, and I may not be doing this justice, but we had a one-page, or two different reports, each one page. I remember we talked about this the other day in the director's meeting, the days of getting reports that had multiple pages of violations. I mean, we've come a long way. So, I'm very proud to hear what they're doing. I think we have good processes in place. Certainly we're not gonna make everybody happy with what we do. But, kudos to all the staff, and it every once in a while it really hits home to me how well they're doing. So, just wanted to take that opportunity to say, you guys are doing a heck of a job all across the board and really appreciate it. That's all I have.
Very good. Anything for Mr. King? Okay, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mayor. I distributed my report last week and an update on Friday, but I wanted to highlight the results of the finance transaction for the police station construction project. We received 6 bids for 15-year debt. And they range from a low of 2.74 to a high of 3.77. JP Morgan Chase came in at a 2.74 rate. They were the ones who were very aggressively pricing in August. And they were the ones I was kind of hoping would still continue to be aggressive, and wasn't sure with the change in the tax law whether or not they still have the appetite for it. Apparently they do. So I'm really thrilled to get a 2.74% interest rate, including a call feature in 7 years. So 7 years in, if we decide, and that will time very nicely with some of our existing debt. I think our 2014 and 15 debt has a call feature about that time. So potentially, if we looked at it, if it made sense, we could roll all 3 into like a single transaction to refinance down the road if the rates make sense. So I'm thrilled with this. The nice thing about this is that it'll be a much faster process. I would anticipate us having the funds on hand no later than February 20th, probably well before that, which means we're good to go with the contract and letting the police department go ahead and pre-order their IT equipment. So we're in good shape. Yeah, good news.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Anything else tonight?
No, that's it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
With that lower than 2.74%, did the administration kind of look at and take a guess? I hate to use non-technical terms. An estimate for where you thought it would be, and is that lower than you thought it would be?
Yes, it is. Yes. We anticipate something closer to 3.5. The reality is what we expected. Debt service average was going to be about $350,000 a year. The way they've structured it, it'll start off with about a $250,000 a year principal payment, and then goes up to, I think, $350, and it steps up.
Mr. King?
And I'll say one of the unknowns, as we talked about in previous meetings, was, you know, whether there'd be, and Jamie already said it, whether there'd be an appetite for the bank placement, if we'd have to go out to the market to do it, so thankfully this worked out great.
It's cut about 2 months off our process.
So,
I know in our last meeting with Robertson, they were ready to, as soon as you give them the word, I think they're gonna
Ready to
move
go.
in. So, that's great news. Thank you, Jamie and BJ. Nate?
Yes, sir. About our EPA inspection, if you wanna know, well, if you have time with coffee, we'll go over our first inspection when I got here to give you an idea of the recommendations and requirements that we had to address. Our recent inspection, the new EPA procedure is a violation, so you saw in the report, there's a letter for the recommendations, which are merely that. Then the other was notice of violation, and there was 2 of them. EPA considers anything that would require a 30-day time period resolution to be considered a violation. Of the 2 violations that we had, one was a electrical conduit that separated at a wellhead. That's been fixed as of Friday. The other is regarding our orthophosphate addition. There's a new standard as it relates to some of the fallout from the issue in Sebring. We've worked with our manufacturer rep on that, and considering we draw directly from our shipping container, there's nothing more that we do other than a letter from the manufacturer that they have chased this down and it does not harbor any bacteria. So, with that being said, if you have any questions regarding any office policies as it relates to customers, I'm more than happy to answer and share with you our approach and how we work in situations with tenants and landlords, and be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Anything for Nate? Alrighty.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
So Nate, just so we can sort of clear things up, I have 2 questions. First of all, how's product?
Product as well, a little frozen right now,
Yeah,
but
sure. So secondly, what is the city's, so we get the truth out here, what is the city's policy with landlords and tenants?
we have a landlord-tenant agreement to where, well, let me backtrack. Whether it is a owner or tenant, anyone that is a customer of the utility department, so you know, we do not set up accounts with folks and their social security numbers. So if somebody does bounce or leave town, we don't track that way. The way the ordinance is written, if there's ever an outstanding balance, if somebody does move or in the case of a tenant, that remains with the property owner to resolve. So whether you're working with the realtor to sell your house, and for some reason there is a balance on that, that has to be worked out in a real estate transaction. When it comes to tenants and landlords, we allow, if the landlord signs off on it, for the tenants to set up and work directly with the utility billing office. So in that situation, basically that's our duplicate. So when a renter will get a copy of the bill, if them and their landlord agreed to go this route, the tenant pays directly to us. 2 copies of every bill goes out, one to the landlord, one to the tenant, to make sure there's no gaps, or if there is a situation where someone is no longer there, we've got a follow-up in place. So we work under that premise that if the landlord says it's okay, that's the way we approach it. So our agreement per se is with the tenant or whoever owes us that bill in that situation. We do not negotiate based on what their rent payment is or anything like that. It's what's owed to us as a city. I think we're very fair. We don't have many cases where tenants or homeowners have large outstanding bills with us. So to be 100% frank, I'm not really sure what the complaint with our process is.
So Mr. Mayor, I want to get this out in the open. So look, so the landlord can, if the landlord chose to, it's the landlord's option, the landlord can come to you and say, for my properties, here's my properties that you service, I want you to send me, the landlord, the bill, and I'll pay it.
Correct.
And then he collects the money from his tenant, however he does, correct?
Yes,
The
yep.
other option is for the landlord, when the person rents the place, to tell the tenant, say, you've gotta go down to the utility office and set this up on your own, this is your responsibility.
That's correct.
So in the case where it's the landlord's option, it's not the
Yes.
tenant's option.
That's correct.
The other question I have is on this, the non-payment issue, so if you have a landlord getting sent the bill, would you ever have any reason to talk to the tenant about the bill? Let's say the bill wasn't getting, let's say the landlord wasn't paying the bill, or the tenant wasn't making the payments to the landlord, and the landlord saying, well, I'm not paying this out of my own pocket.
So let's say in the case that there's a tenant that is behind, or if they're on a payment plan, and they're not maintaining that commitment, if there is a shut-off that needs to occur, both parties will be notified, the renter and the owner.
But if, I guess what I'm saying, if the landlord set it up so that he got the bill, the tenant there wouldn't know if the bill was being paid or not. Because the tenant would never get it, would the tenant get a bill?
Not if the landlord's paying us directly. Yeah.
So the simple solution is for the landlord to say, I want you to send me all the bills.
Correct.
And then that would get rid of the problem with, because the tenant would never know if the bill was being paid or not.
That would be true.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks Nate, thanks Mr. Mayor.
I just want one more clarification. So additionally, it's the landlord's obligation to come to you and give you all of his, to tell you all of his properties in Pataskala. Otherwise, you would have no reason for somebody that lives at 111, whatever, First Street, comes in, gets his stuff set up. You wouldn't know if he's a tenant or an owner,
That's
essentially.
correct. That's correct.
So it's
That's
really
situation.
the owner of the property to come to you and say, here's all my properties, and this is how I want them handled.
Correct.
And then after that, if he has a tenant that wants the bill in their name, then he and the tenant would come to you, or would go through an agreement,
Yes, right.
both signing off on it,
Yes, correct.
that this would be sent essentially to him, or you could even say to both the tenant and the owner gets the bill at the same time.
Yes. And in that case, when we send out the duplicate, it's out of courtesy, just so the landlord is aware of what's going on with that account.
Can I
So they're not surprised.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Has this been put in a letter to a typical landlord? Do they get those letters? I mean,
Yeah, and that's
standardized?
with our owner-tenant agreement. We have a form. If somebody chooses to go that route, this is a process. At this point, with I guess the rental properties that we're aware of, we work very well with our folks on this, and doesn't seem to be I guess a global issue, more of an acute.
I guess one last question, Tim, I'm sorry with Mr. Hilfridge. What has been the policy? Has he come in and told you all of his properties and then said, these tenants you can send a bill to, these tenants I want the bill? Has he been back and forth on which way he's gonna go, depending on what property it is and what tenant it is? I'm trying to get to the reason why we have this complaint.
Yeah. So, how do I say? We have a situation with this gentleman that he chooses to allow his tenants to set up an account with us.
Does he sign off on them also?
Yes. There,
Okay.
for each account, there's a landlord-tenant policy. So it seems to be, in this case, we manage sending the bill, collecting the bill from the tenant. It seems on a couple cases that some tenants were in the eviction process, of which we have no knowledge about. We don't discuss that. So it seems that a tenant paid us, met our obligation or our agreement with them, and they were in good standing with us. That seemed to affect the process of him either not collecting rent, whatever. So I think that's the crux.
Okay, sorry, one last one. If it is in the tenant's name, are they the only ones that can turn the water off? Are they the only ones that can give you notice to turn the water off, for instance?
The tenant?
The tenant is in good standing, the bill is in their name,
Mhm.
like you just described.
Mr. Hilfridge or whomever has evicted them. Can Mr. Hilfridge call you and say, turn the water off at 111 First Street because that person is evicted?
In that case, there would be some documentation to support that, so
I can,
we're not unfairly put between legal proceedings and, so.
got it.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I think actually, you've answered my question, although I wanna make sure. You talked about acute or a general. Have you seen this problem with in other situations with rental properties in the city? Is it fairly common, or is it?
No,
Okay,
I would say fairly uncommon.
okay.
Mr. Barstow?
I mean, it sounds like what happened is in this one case, the tenant chose to pay the water bill to keep the water on rather than pay the rent. Because the water gets turned off right away, and it takes 30 to 45 days sometimes, depending on the court, to get an eviction from start to finish.
And I would imagine Mr. Hilfridge couldn't get the water turned off. I mean, that's probably what he was trying, I would imagine he attempted to turn the water off.
And in that situation, there's maybe some legal review. I think it would be hard for us to shut off somebody that was approved to work with us.
Exactly.
And it puts us at, so, in my suggestion to him was, if you wanna make this simple, then don't let that be an option, so you have full control over every account in our system.
Which is perfectly standardized in our
Yeah.
system.
Absolutely, and there's some folks that do it that way, some that don't. As far as developing a hardline policy, I'll say, to say, we're only gonna work with the landowner, I don't wanna, I guess, put us in that corner because we like being flexible. If we've got lots of great standing folks in this town that take advantage of this option without issue, so.
But ultimately, it's the land, the water bill runs with the land. I mean,
It will stay with the property in the event that we're owed.
Well, let's say I'm renting out a property and something else, or the property gets up getting foreclosed on. As part of the foreclosure process, we're gonna have a lien on the property that the lien would hopefully would get paid. It should be.
Yeah, and
All right.
usually in those cases, we get like, typically we'll get like bankruptcy notices.
Right.
And that's kind of the process we go.
Okay.
If it happens. So,
Mr. Mayor, thanks, Nate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of double down on what Mr. Hinkins said. You've never seen this type of issue with any other customer before. Okay. What, moving forward, I mean, obviously, we trust you to, you know, follow policy and do whatever you can. I mean, I've dealt with you too with small business, and you guys have been great, as always. So I trust you to handle it appropriately. Is there, what can we do to, how do I put this? How can we not have this happen again, or is that possible? How about that?
Hey, Mayor, if I can real quick,
Okay.
if you don't mind. We certainly, I think what we've realized with this discussion, we have a policy in place that works. So I don't know what we could change. We've got a lot of landlords in the community who we haven't had this issue with. It seems to work. You know, this is first time we've heard about this, so I really don't know what we could do to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. Because quite frankly, we have a policy, again, that works.
Well, look, if you don't mind, I'll rephrase that then. I guess something finalized. If we follow the policy to a T, then Mr. Halford needs to hear that these are the rules and he's going to follow them. And I think that that's to the point we're at, and I think that's as cut and dry as it needs to be.
And, in all honesty, well, he spoke of speaking with Steph. They talk frequently. He's aware of how this goes. There's nothing new, so whatever drew the ire in this situation, I don't know exactly what we may have misstepped or done wrong compared to what we've done in the past and how we've dealt with others.
Okay. Well, thank you, and continue to do a great job for the city. You guys are great, so thank you.
Anything else for Nate? Thank you, sir. Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I have tonight is an update on Columbia Culvert. My last report, we received a change order from Law General, and we're getting ready to review it. That change order was for $45,000 above the original contract price of $179,000. I went through with our construction administration team as well as our city engineer, and we threw out anything that was basically laws due to weather, anything that was due to southwest licking, and narrowed that down to the items that were incidental to the project, and we returned a change order to them in the amount of just over $18,000. They did accept that as reasonable and fair. So we went ahead and paid the original pay application, and then our next steps will be going. I'll take that to the street committee to review that change order as we send it back to them. And then we will need, since this was a 2017 PO for one, and two, we only authorized the original contract amount, we will need to go for a supplemental, roughly $30,000. But note that that is still well below our budget and well below our original engineer's estimate. The budget was $300,000. With this change order, we'll be looking at about $210,000. So even though it is over the contract price, we're still in pretty good shape. And that $30,000 will include any remaining items to be paid, like the surface asphalt course, which we do anticipate will be a little heavy due to changes that I made on the project. A lot of numbers there. Any question on that before I move on to the next one?
Yes.
Well, again, an excellent job on the snow removal. I had to leave early this morning, and it was great until you got to the county line. And then, once again, the city of Columbus had done nothing to Broad Street, nothing, literally. It was just a sheet of ice. So I turned around, came back, I went down Taylor Road, Reynoldsburg done a nice job, their streets, their trucks are out solving, they're doing a nice job. I was able to get on the freeway. However, the city of Columbus, I think the city of Columbus does the freeway inside the city of Interstate 70. They had not done Interstate 70 in downtown Columbus.
Wow.
It was a sheet of ice. 7:45.
I felt bad for the guys that had to go out during the Super Bowl. Didn't get to see the second half, but they got out and got it taken care of.
It
So
was great. Good job. And
appreciate
you
that.
got some more coming, but good job. Keep it up. Thanks.
Yeah, it's all about timing, and yeah, I felt bad for him too, but again, if you hit them when you're supposed to, then you don't have the problems everybody else has, so, yep, kudos. I've been hearing it all I've actually been hearing it all winter, so it's good stuff. Anything else for Alan? Do you have anything else?
well, I've got more items. I
Okay.
didn't get a chance on that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Second item is Main Street, the resolution that's on the table tonight, 2018-011. That is the resolution basically provided by ODOT to move forward with bidding and construction of the Main Street Phase 2 project. That number has actually changed a little bit from what's shown on the agenda and what's shown in the legislative report. We found when we asked ODOT for what our current standing is on the project, they realized that there was local share of about $160,000 on the right-of-way side that was not used, would not be needed for right-of-way. So they were able to apply that towards our construction cost. So the number that's in the report says $848,000. We were actually able to get that down to $688,000. So that's good news for us, about $160,000 potential savings, because this is just to go out to bid. And then there's also, we had budgeted for the construction side $1.1 million. So then when they came back with the $850,000, there's roughly another $240,000, again, of potential savings there. So right now, we have a potential for savings of around $400,000 below what we budgeted for the Main Street Phase 2 project. So that's looking good, as long as numbers for the contractor don't come back in astronomical. We should see some savings on that project. Don't want to count that yet, but looking good. Last two items I have, one roadway conditions. Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question on that?
Absolutely.
It's more of a question of clarification, and I was, as much for council as myself. That, what you're speaking about there does not involve the house at Macon and Broad.
Correct, that's Main Street Phase 3 is the house.
And the citizens that live up and down that road, I assume that they know that that's coming?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that they've been notified. I mean, I'm sure some of them were notified because they may lose a little. I don't want citizens to suddenly show up and think they're having a bike taken out of their property or something like that because they haven't been prepared for it.
And I will say, I think there were about 90 properties we had to acquire easements right away from, whatever, so everybody's been well aware. We've had public meetings before construction too, they'll be notified of what's happening.
Can you guys give me roughly the stretch? Is it before or after the railroad tracks?
Runs from basically the intersection at Macon Broad, so where we finished the phase 3 improvements, to the bridge just north of Havens Corners.
Okay.
It's roughly a quarter mile, maybe not quite that far north of Havens.
It's almost where the house is with the goats that we always hear about. That's where the new pavement ended.
Yes.
Yep.
Correct.
That's where it'll pick up, go across the tracks and all the way down to Havens Corners.
And that project will also realign the intersection at Adams and Cleveland and help the grade going over the railroad tracks, so it'll be much safer.
Excellent, thank you.
That'll start in,
Well, tree clearing has been completed. Utility relocations will be going on from now until the end of April. They're getting ready to go out to bid once we get this resolution. Construction should start June, July timeframe if everything goes as planned.
and how long will that take?
Don't remember the duration on that one. I want to say it's close to 9 months. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to look.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know. Thank you. Anything else for Alan? Did you have something? Oh, you got some more stuff.
If he's done.
Okay, anything on
Not
this
quite done
topic?
yet.
Yeah, I didn't think he was done yet.
There you go.
Thank you. I just want to mention the roadway conditions, due to all the freeze thaw cycles we've had this year. They've been really hard on the roads. Driving around central Ohio area, it seems like a lot of other communities are experiencing the same things, not unique. But we are getting out as often as we can when weather permits to do pothole patching. We did some dirt patching, which is atypical for us in January, but just to try and hold things together and keep the roads as passable as we can. And then finally, there was an email from Ms. Sams earlier this week, I believe, and I spoke with her today, and we've got a meeting set up for, or sorry, that was last week, we had the letter. We're set up for this Friday morning to go out there, take another look at that, and see what else needs to be done. And now I'm done, and happy to answer any questions.
Andy?
Thank you, Alan. One of my questions was about the email. Obviously, I'm glad to hear that you guys are going back out to look at it, and hopefully the weather will permit you guys to get a good look at it. We had asked about salt quantities. Any update on the salt quantities?
We have used at this point roughly 2,000 tons. Our barns were full and handled just around 2,000 tons at the beginning of the year. My math isn't probably going to quite add up. It's going to be rough numbers. We've ordered, we have one more shipment on the way of 600 tons to finish out our state bid contract, which was 1,500 tons plus or minus 10%. We went ahead and maxed that out. So with this, we will have ordered all the salt for the state contract. That will leave us roughly half of our budget remaining, where we might need to go out and find other salt, which will probably be a slightly higher price than the state bid contract. Jason is working that now. We found some that's got an additive to it that's supposed to make it act quicker, but it's $20 more a ton, so we're hoping to find the basic rock salt for roughly $50 a ton to get us through the rest of the year, which we will plan on using, buying some more to get the barns back full.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. You're not gonna leave the barns empty?
That is not the plan, no.
And, I think that's all I had.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Status on Main Street. How are neighbors, are we all in, progress?
We're not, Alan and I had a meeting last Tuesday
Monday.
with our AEP representative who's above who we've been working with. We talked to her about it, the concerns that we have, and she is checking with the guy who we've been working with. We have yet to receive a follow-up from her, but I'll follow up with her tomorrow and see where that stands. You know, what's interesting with that, and I explained it, so the woman we met with that, you know, AEP, I was asking AEP to get us the easement documents, and they've now come back and said, well, there are easements, we need to be the ones that are out getting them, we need to be the ones managing getting them. So we talked to Renee, is her name, last week, so I'll get a follow-up tomorrow and get it out to council.
Okay. Any progress on the the covers for the street fair electrical boxes?
I've got the measurements for 'em and looking for those, and I anticipate in the spring having
Okay.
those put on.
Awesome. I have one more. Do we replace the pedestrian signs that are in the, I mean, I just noticed that they get pretty beat up, and is that something that we replace often?
As we've only had them for not quite a year yet, we're still figuring that out. We do replace them as
Okay.
needed. One of them, the whole base got ripped out.
Right, I noticed that.
So we haven't been able to replace that one.
Okay, maybe
Uh,
spring after the plows are done.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll check both
In-
of them.
One thing, you know, we're gonna look to see if we need to leave those up throughout the winter, or we can take them down, because they certainly take a beating with plow trucks going down through there. I believe you guys have stickers and other faces for them, you know, spare parts for them, but I'm hopeful in future winters be able to take those out so they don't get so beat up and run through them like we do.
Okay, thanks.
Cause they're just bolted, we can take them out for like the street fair and the
Mhm.
Christmas parade and stuff to make it a little easier.
Correct.
Good. Very good. Anything else for Alan tonight? Thank you, sir. Mr. Fulton?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to update my report. As you'll see, at the time that the report went out for Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, there were no applications. It is still the case at this point, but we do expect a slew of applications to be coming in. We've had conversations with potential applicants. The deadline for Planning Commission is this Friday. We do expect some applications to come in. And the deadline for Board of Zoning Appeals is next Friday, and again, we do expect some applications to be coming in, but at this point, we don't know exactly how many, but we do plan on having those meetings, next month. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Scott? Okay, very good. And again, kudos to Zach. I really
Thank you, I appreciate
the professionalism and how he carries himself when he's representing the city.
I appreciate that, I'll pass that along.
Very good. Chief Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank the Pastor Mike Saldivar and the Grace Brethren Church and their staff for hosting our memorial service of K-9 Junior last Thursday. It was a nice memorial. Appreciate everything they and as well as you did. That's all I have.
Yes, that was a, how old was Junior again?
I'm sorry, almost 12.
12 years old. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of public folks came out, and some of our police departments in and around the area came out because obviously they've interacted with Mr. Morton and Junior over the years. So yeah, that was fantastic. And I know I sent out a quickie email, but the auction of the dog went very, very well. No problems. Everything's history on that. That money has been, I assume, Jamie put into the K-9 fund so that we can start our next process of getting a dog and getting it trained and heading down that road.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And before we head into, let's see, I think next is committee chair reports. On your desk, you'll find the latest copies of Licking County Proud and Licking County, Explore Licking County. So if you need any of these for your businesses, or you'd like some more, I've got a couple boxes coming, so just holler and I'll deliver them. Lots of good stuff, not only Licking County, but Pataskala. Committee chair reports, anybody have anything tonight? Mr. Powell?
And the Ag Committee met this evening at 6:15 to consider 8 different applications for the Ag District. The committee recommends approval by full council for all 8 of them. And no other business was discussed.
Okay. Any other committee chair reports? Yes, sir.
Street Committee met with the one object to discuss, which was the RFP for the 2018 ramp. We did get into a long discussion about several projects. What is currently on the proposed 2018 ramp is Headley's Mill, Summit Road, Mink Street, and Creek Road. Alan had mentioned that, or brought to our attention, that Cable Road was both in very bad shape, but also in preparation for the school work that's going to be done up there. That there should be some work up there to be done. With all that being tallied and calculated, the original budget for 2018 would have been exceeded. So we discussed at great length the, what essentially was the remaining monies from the 2017 ramp, which we, in round numbers, had 180,000 left over from the 2018 ramp. We acknowledge that 3 projects this year, or from last year, will require some of that money to be spent. Columbia Road, Culvert, Mink and Broad intersection, and Main Street will all require to have some change orders. One of them Alan had mentioned this evening, to come up to about $90,000. So with that, $75,000 essentially being left over and being applied, it was our opinion to apply to the 2018 ramp. The recommendation we made to Alan was to go forward with an RFP for Headley's Mill and to go through and do Headley's Mill with a slightly different option than the full option, one with no chip and seal on it, and also to look at the Headley's Mill to divide it up into a percentage rather than doing 100% of Headley's Mill. Maybe it was 50 or 60 or 70% will be the optimal amount that we'll actually complete, but to go ahead and have the engineering done for the whole thing, to get a number for it. Also to include Summit, Mill, and Creek in that RFP, as well as Cable, and see where we came out with our after we get the RFP done, go out to bid and see where the number comes in at. Hopefully we can get some good numbers. And our next meeting, well, I should say, there are about 9 projects that Alan has identified that will be done in-house throughout the year that we can do rather than putting out as part of the roadway project. And then we will have another meeting on the 12th of February at 4:30, and we'll discuss the other 14 or 15 items that we need to discuss there, continue discussing. Now, any questions?
Busy, busy, where are the streets? Yes,
Streets
sir.
are busy.
Tommy?
Yes, we had a buildings and grounds meeting, last Wednesday. We took a field trip and we went down to Old Town Hall and did a walkthrough with the committee. BJ was there, Chief Brooks, Nate, and Kathy was there. Who did I miss anything?
Mayor.
Oh, Mayor was there, sorry, Mayor. Mayor was there, sorry. We had a great meeting down there. We really just wanted to put our eyes on the building and see if what we talked about in our previous meeting made sense, and get a game plan together so we could, kind of take the next step as far as gathering, prices and beginning to see what a renovation would cost the city. It was everything that we expected. The basement is obviously a mess, and I think we came up with a pretty decent plan that gives a lot of flexibility along the way. We did vote unanimously to put a motion forward to council tonight to have BJ begin the process of gathering design and renovation quotes. You'll see that later on tonight. I'd like to add to that by saying that BJ and I met with Diane Grove and Brian Elder Friday morning from Pataskala Chamber. They had previously expressed interest in the building, as I reported in my last report, and they just wanted to come down and see it too. And we took another tour, and they are pretty much in. So I guess that's the best way to put it without being completely official. The timing's going to line up well, so I think it's going to work out well. And obviously, Nate, if you want to add anything, Nate, you can hop in, but I think it'll serve utilities well there also. So again, you'll see a motion on that later. And the last thing I'd like to say is I've been in there before, quite a few times, but just being back, not being in there for probably the past year or so. And I'll tell you what, our police department's done more with less than any. I can't imagine another police department doing what you guys have done at the high level you do it, working out of that place. And I think it just, I think council made an absolute great decision to move forward and get you guys something that is well overdue. But I mean, it's just amazing what you guys do out of that building. So kudos to you guys. So that's all I have.
Any other committee chair reports? Yes, sir, Mr. Hicken.
a whole slew of them. You can tell the city is busy jumping into work at the new year. The utility committee met on January 29th. We discussed essentially what is the utility committee's version, or the utilities department's version of the ramp. It's called SWIMS. It does align with the CIP. We spoke specifically about a couple of projects. One is, council will remember, a high phosphorus count, removing phosphorus. That is going to, for lack of a better term, involves extending a building at the sewage treatment plant so that our pressing can be more efficient. And we talked about the engineering process for that to start. We also spoke about our Station 1 having its wells cleaned, and that is going out to bid in the next 2 weeks. Does that sound right?
I hope so.
Yeah. So, something that's kind of interesting and new that's happening in the city is the Wilcox development, which for lack of a better, just for a descriptive term, is the development that's going in behind the Puerto Vallarta restaurant. We know that we have a bottleneck on Creek Road. Part of what was worked out between the administration and the developers of that Wilcox development are having them pay to remove that bottleneck on Creek Road in lieu of tap fees. What that does, that has pluses and minuses. The minuses are you may not get as much as you would have gotten in tap fees. The plus is you get it immediately, and it's immediately applied to a problem that the city has, and I think we all remember water pressure. Sugar Mill, I don't know, it should help with that some. I don't know how much totally, but we discussed all of that. We also talked about the city's water emergency plan. The city is gonna be participating in a tabletop on the February 20th, if you remember. Part of that is gonna involve testing our water department's readiness to deal with emergencies, and it seemed like a logical time to update their emergency plan, and so Mr. Cooey took us through that. Also, we talked about the agreement with Southwest Licking Community Sewer and Water. We're going to continue those discussions with them to talk about shared service areas and possibly the job-ready site. And the administration is in the process of setting that up with Southwest Licking's administration. I always toss it open to the other people that are on the committee. Did I miss anything? Or Mr. Cooey, did I miss anything specifically?
I think you got it.
Okay. That's a fast, that meeting was an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and a half, so
That was a condensed version?
that's a severe Reader's Digest version. I'm happy to talk to anybody either in open council or personally about it if anything in there trips your trigger, so. Also, on that same night, the HR committee met. A couple items on that agenda. The first one was New Year, time for evaluations, and so look for those to be coming out. I think I made the statement that the hardest part about doing them is not doing them myself, but getting everybody to turn them into me, although for the most part, council's been pretty good about that. So look for those coming in February, and as a reminder, that's our finance director and our city administrator. Oh, and our law director. We asked questions and evaluated some questions about the handbook. Most of the questions I think were focused on, kind of give us a little bit of a history about why this is happening now. That was done by Mr. Nicholson and Mr. King very well, I think. Currently that item's tabled. I would look personally, I'll look to remove that from the table. Of course, it's up to council to decide, but we would then have 3 readings for council to ask any other specific questions. Also, the HR committee submitted, are also in the process of submitting questions. For the most part, once we went through it, it was pretty cut and dry, and I think it's ready for council to ask questions. So I'll probably ask for that to be taken off the table tonight. The last one we talked about was a very brief discussion on the finance clerk. Mr. Nicholson gave us what everybody has now seen, which is the Reader's Digest condensed version of the clerk position. We didn't have any questions and thanked him for producing that for us. And, of course, that's up for a third reading tonight as well, so everybody can ask any other questions that relates to that, but I personally was, fine with what we were given, so. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Okay.
Here ends my committee reports.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. On to unfinished business, 4304 and 4305 will remain tabled. Ordinance 2018-4308 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2018-4308, this is the third reading. An ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to amend ordinance 2018-4308 by substitution.
Got a motion to amend by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion? And roll on the motion to amend.
Howe,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Looking for a motion to adopt.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I believe we cannot adopt that because it was
Okay.
amended by substitution of third.
That's a third reading, which puts us on a fourth reading.
Fourth reading
Okay.
on February 20th.
Next month. Very good, thank you. Ordinance 2018-4309 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2018-4309, this is the third reading, an ordinance to create and establish compensation for a new full-time position of employment, accounting clerk, within the city of Pataskla, and to amend 2017-2019 pay matrix for the non-collectively bargained employees for the city of Pataskla, effective for the pay period beginning on and after January 14th, 2018.
Discussion? And roll, please.
We need a motion to adopt.
Oh, I'm sorry. Need a motion to adopt?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2018-4309.
Got a motion by Mr. Hicken. Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll, please. Motion to adopt.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Walther,
No.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
No.
Okay, ordinance passes. On to resolutions. Motion, new business. Ordinance 2018-4307 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2018-4307, this is the first reading, an ordinance to rezone property located at Klima Drive, parcel number 063-141984-00.000, totaling 3.95 plus or minus acres in the city of Pataskla from light manufacturing M1 and medium density residential R20 zoning classifications to light manufacturing M1 zoning classification.
Discussion? Ordinance 2018-4310 for a first reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to take ordinance 2018-4310 off the table.
Got a motion to take 4310 off the table?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Barstow.
Roll.
Roll for the motion to take it off the table.
Lee,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Okay, it's off the table. Do we need to read that then?
yes.
Okay, go ahead, when you're ready, first reading.
Do you need that to be moved and seconded, or?
we need, yes,
Okay.
motion to.
I'll make
Motion
that,
already.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hicken, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2018-4310, this is the first reading, an ordinance to amend the Employee Handbook and Policy Manual for public employees of the city of Pataskala.
Discussion? Okay. On to resolutions. Resolution 2018-009, resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract to purchase a fully equipped 2018 Ford Interceptor SUV police vehicle through the State of Ohio Competitive Purchasing Program.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion? And roll.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2018-010, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract to purchase 4 Motorola APX 6000 portable radios through the State of Ohio Competitive Purchasing Program.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion? And roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2018-011, a resolution authorizing the final agreement for the Mink Street Phase 2 project, ODOT project ID 95233, and directing the payment of the city's cost share of $848,065.68 to the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Hey, Mayor, real quick.
Yes.
And I don't know how we have to do this, but the amount on the agenda is incorrect. No, I shouldn't say incorrect, it's the old amount. The new amount is $688,065.68. It is correct on the legislation though, so, I would just,
what was the amount?
it is $688,065.68.
Mr. Law Director, what do you think there?
You should still amend the resolution.
You should amend the resolution, okay? Yes, sir.
Amend resolution 2018-011 to change the amount to $688,065.68. So that'd be 688,065.68.
Got a motion to amend.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll on the motion to amend.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Okay, motion to amend passes. Back to the original resolution.
Move passage.
Got a motion to pass by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll
and that'll be to, as amended.
as amended. Resolution 2018-011 as amended.
The resolution that's in your packet is correct, it was just wrong, the title on the agenda. So we just had to amend the agenda, so it's not as amended for the resolution, it's just adopting the resolution as presented.
Okay.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2018-012, a resolution providing council's confirmation of the hiring of the Pataskala Parks Manager.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could we possibly have Mr. Crawford come up and
Sure. Introduce yourself, name and address, and we'll see if you'd like to say a few words, and then we'll see if council has any questions for you.
Lanier Crawford, address 4881 Columbia Road, Southwest, Pataskala, Ohio.
Well.
Continue. Thank you for having me. I knew I was going to be a great asset to the city as soon as I came in last summer and gave a little preview of what I would like to do with Pataskala Parks, and I'm glad that you guys appointed me to come in today.
Very good. Any
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Crawford? Yes, sir.
Okay, one, the department to which you're joining is a tight budgeted thing. Do you have experience with that?
No experience coming from the healthcare industry, so I do have experience writing grants. I'm able to go out and find things that we may need, so I don't mind doing projects, doing reports, anything of that matter,
On your own initiative?
on my own.
Good answer.
Anything else? All right, we'll see what happens here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just kidding.
Welcome.
All right, this is to confirm Mr. King's appointment. When you're ready, Kathy.
Who moved and seconded the motion to confirm?
I believe it was Mr. Barstow and Mr. Hicken.
Hicken,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes. Yes.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you for that.
Okay, on the motions. Motion to approve the agriculture district application submitted by James C. Helfrich, Mary Ann Spar, successor trustee, Judith Y. Baird, Patrick R. Lee, trustee, Victoria L. Brush, Robinson Family Farm LTD LLC, Tri-H Farms LLC, and Charles N. Baird, trustee.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Walter,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll, please.
Lee,
Abstain.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes. Yes. Hicken,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Motion to confirm the appointment of Eric Bortmus as the Licking Heights School District's representative to the Pataskala Parks and Recreation Board.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion? Yes.
You know, I don't know Mr. Bortmas, and I can't tell you that he's been involved in the parks. I don't recognize that name or anything. Were we given some kind of resume or any kind of information on Mr. Bortmas?
Typically, the way it's been done with the school district appointment, they make a recommendation, and council confirms. I don't recall in the past ever going that route.
Well, I guess I would bring up that with the new park manager and with everything that's going on in the parks, you know, I don't know who this person is necessarily, and I've been involved with parks for 10 years, so I'm a little bit concerned. I would, you know, we do have to confirm, so to vote for him, I would certainly like to have some more information, and I certainly would also say that with Mel not here tonight, being the park liaison, I would feel uncomfortable with that, so if it would be possible, I would suggest tabling this until maybe we can get some more information from the school district, and then, and certainly have Mel present. That'd be my opinion.
Making a motion to table?
I'm merely stating my opinion, but yes, I'll go ahead and make a motion to table.
Got a motion to table, seconded by who? Mr. Powell? Okay. Do we have to, it's just tabled, right? Oh, we need a
No, we
roll?
need a
Okay,
roll.
need a roll, please. Go ahead, Kathy.
Walter,
Yes?
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Nope.
Hayes. Yes. Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, motion to table has passed. Any other motions tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hicken.
I'd like to make a motion for the city of Pataskala to accept the donation of the mountain howitzer from Jeremy McIntyre for the Jeremy McIntyre Eagle Scout project.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Hicken, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion? And roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes. Yes. Lee, Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes?
Okay, motion passes. Any other motions tonight?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to direct the city administrator to begin the process of gathering design and renovation quotes for Old Town Hall to include but not limited to the following. First floor, Pataskala Chamber of Commerce area. Utilities Department headquarters and potentially the mayor's office. Basement, multi-purpose room, storage room, and potentially the bathroom.
Got a motion by Mr. Lee.
Make a motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Lee, you're seconding
Second.
it? Seconded
Yeah.
by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion? Yes, sir.
Tom, what do you think, is that with an architect, or what, do you think there's cost involved in this? What are you proposing?
Well, I will refer that to BJ, but go ahead, I'll let you take it.
For the main floor, that would be used by the chamber and,
Utility.
utilities, I'm
Cone.
sorry.
Call me Cone.
I don't anticipate there being any architectural work for that. I do think we may need to get an electrical engineer in there or something to take a look at the electrical work, or get some, quotes from a electrician, commercial electrician, to upgrade that. Basement, one side where we're looking at the, storage area where the evidence room currently is, I don't think we're gonna need any architectural work. And the same for the other side. I think it's just getting quotes that can be built into the budget in 2019 for contractors to get in there and do the work.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that is, as the motion was read, it's to begin the process of gathering quotes on design and renovation. So if there is an architect, he would need to come back with a quote for us as to what that would be. And another thing that I want to throw in there too, BJ, if I'm not cutting off there, but
Now, go ahead.
Mrs. Carter made a really good point last meeting, when we asked for feedback from council. And I don't think we got we put out an email, I don't know if we got anything other than what Mrs. Carter said, but, about needing office space, especially we just passed a, finance person. Parks needs an office and potentially a human resources officer if that, part-time, but we threw in the potential of moving the mayor's office down there if that works out. I don't know if it will or won't, but the way that we put this motion together was to give him flexibility. We're not locked into doing any certain thing there. It's to get, I feel like we're starting to talk it to death, really. We're meeting to talk about it. Let's just go out and get some prices. It's not gonna cost the city anything, is the way I see it. And then when there does become cost involved in that, then that would be the next step.
Yeah. Well, certainly the next step is to know what our costs are, so as we start to prepare the budget for 19, we can put it in there as, CIP items, whatever, to do the work we need, knowing that, I would say late first quarter, early second quarter, police will be moving in, we'll need to do some work over there. My goal is to do the work in the old town hall after the police move out, when it's empty, get it ready to go, and then move anybody in there who we need. It's gonna be easier to do it that way.
Okay, thanks.
Got it?
Okay, got a motion. Do we get a second?
Yeah,
Suzanne.
Yeah, Suzanne.
Okay, Suzanne, a second. We've had this, any other discussion, I guess I should say. All right, Kathy, roll please.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Any other motions? Okay, additional citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak tonight? On anything we've discussed today? We'll start with Suzanne tonight.
Let's see, I had a couple. Tim, I always appreciate your detailed notes on the fire board. I think those are interesting, and, so I appreciate that. You're really good at that. Let's see, this morning, compliment on the roads. My son had went over to the high school before we knew that it was going to, be closed to weight lift with the new football coach, and he said that, he came home and he said, Mom, there's such a difference. It was right when Pataskala ends, we had to slow down to like 20 miles an hour. So that's a 16-year-old boy who knows, and so I smiled at that. So I just wanted to let you know that it is noticed. So thank you. That's all for me.
Mr. Barstow?
Don't have anything, so thank you.
Mr. Hicken?
Like everybody else, I appreciate the work that the snow people do. I love how it always sounds like in the Wizard of Oz when you step out of the woods and all of a sudden it goes from being one thing to another as you approach the city. But I think they do a great job. Welcome to our two new officers and Mr. Crawford. Excited to have you all on board. Something I usually don't do. I usually don't comment on motions. I would say, generally speaking, any anytime somebody asks to table, I'm usually willing to do it if it involves gathering more information. But I also want to make sure that Mr. Bortmus knows that personally, I'm always grateful to anybody that puts their hat in the ring. So I hope we can get some information on him, and I probably will be contacting him directly and thanking him as well. So I don't want any bad feelings there. I don't think there will be, but just in case. So, and that's all for me.
Mr. Walther?
Only that, well, two, I wanted to comment, the purpose that just getting some more information, and getting maybe even a chance to have Mr. Bortmus come to us so we can ask some questions. I think it's important with as much stuff that's happening in the parks these days. And then secondly, the meeting for the Streets Committee on the 12th, 4:30, I believe was our time, Alan. I believe that's correct.
Correct.
So that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I think from my discussions with Mrs. Carter, that the Development Committee is also anticipating picking up the meeting which was missed this evening. And we're looking at either this week or next Monday, need to see where everybody's schedules fit, as well as the possible consultant regarding the comprehensive plan. So
Hopeful for next Monday?
not hopeful, but I haven't confirmed that with Mrs. Carter yet.
Sure.
And she's the chair, so.
What I'll say is consultant as far as this week is booked, so we could do it, he's available next Monday or thereafter.
Okay.
Mr. Mosher, do you have anything? Thank you for attending tonight. We appreciate it. My pleasure. Thank you. Mr. Powell?
Kathy, do we have any applications for Ag District?
Yes, more coming.
Okay,
They're in the process.
okay, so,
Both for the next meeting and the following meeting.
okay,
We'll have applications.
so let's go ahead and get, if we can, a meeting set up for 20th,
Okay.
then,
6:15? Same process?
It'll be a little bit, maybe a little earlier. There's only gonna be 2 applications for you to consider.
okay.
And that public hearing will be at 6:35. So it's up to you how much time you want for your ag committee meeting.
Is there anything before that? Any,
Yes, there's another public hearing.
okay,
So what's the schedule for the 20th?
We have Scott's got his public hearing. It's on the code changes. That'll be at 6:45, I believe. And then we'll have our ag districts at 6:35. And then you can schedule your committee meetings accordingly.
okay, so we'll just do 6:20 for the,
That'd be
Anything else, Mike?
nope, that's it.
Okay. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, couple things, like to welcome Mr. Crawford, heard great things about you, and, looking forward to getting to know you, I'm sure you do a great job, so. I'd like to congratulate the 2 new police officers. It's exciting to get you guys on the street, and, so congratulations to those. I'd also like to publicly, congratulate Jake Keener, he's our new Watkins varsity football coach. I was humbled and honored to have the opportunity to sit on the committee, and we had 60 applicants, and Jake was absolutely the cream of the crop. And he's going to bring a lot to this community. He's a young guy, and really excited for him to come to Watkins. And he's coming from Pickerington North, and just an all-around great guy, bringing a really nice staff. I think when the boys walked into the locker room Friday, they met part of the staff, Zach Bourne from Ohio State. So I think they got the boys a little wound up coming in the weight room, seeing Mr. Bourne there. So congratulations to Jake. I think it's a great thing for the community in Watkins. So
They are so wound up that they're stealing peanut butter from my house and storing it in their lockers now because they need the protein after they work out. So they go shopping for peanut butter. The can was this big, and they're pretty cool. They're pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. Right? I can't tell, but anyway, the last thing I just want to say is I will not be at the next meeting. I've got an opportunity. I wouldn't say once in a lifetime, but to go to the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland, to take some leadership training. I'll be gone for a week, so I apologize, but I will not be at the next meeting. I'm gonna take advantage of that opportunity, so.
Very good.
And finally, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion and roll.
Hayes? Yes. Pickens?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes?
Powell?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, sir.